I get sick of these forums of you talking about what's done to us. The black man has to take a stand. We ain't gonna get out of this condition. The Bible says, arise, arise, awake, ye men of Zion. Shake yourself from the dust. You used to rule the earth. Now we groveling at some cracker's feet. And if your brother stands up and speaks bold and speaks of war with the enemy, you back off from him and run like a little sissy. I don't agree with that cheap language. Kind of damn cheap language. There is no special way to talk to the enemy. Well, you got to be polite with the enemy. Well, you shouldn't talk about the Pope. What the hell is the Pope? He's not just the Pope of Rome. He's the goddamn punk of Rome. Some faggot sitting up in the Vatican somewhere fondling little boys and stuff. You don't know what's under that damn dress. You might find out that the Pope of Rome is Mother Superior. Give a damn about no Pope. Somebody has to pull down the idols. Bust up the idols. The Pope is an idol. I'm not going to talk about Kennedy or Clinton. And I'm going to speak of them in such respectful terms, Mr. President. Hell no, this is the murderer of my people.
It's good seeing you here in Washington, D.C., putting some information out about what's going on in the community. I think, as you can see, the Black Power Conference is going on behind me as such. And again, I'm listening to a lot of topics that I've heard over the last 35, 40 years. They don't seem to change, and I wonder about that. As an example, on the question of reparations. I'm a brother who still believes in reparations, but I have a different take on reparations from most other brothers in the movement. See, I think as we acquire and establish a power base for ourselves, we ought to figure out a way of how we extract reparations out of this thing, as opposed to waiting for the white man to wake up one day and get a good heart and say he's going to give us some reparations. I don't think that's ever going to come true. But just as an example, back in 1998, we had a big conference here in Washington, D.C., and one of the sessions was called The Plan. What plan did us as activist members of the community have in place for what we wanted to see take place? Not just come up to the stage and complain about all the negative energy that's been pushed at us from the white community, all the negative behavior that's been pushed toward us from the white community. Like the false incarcerations and all the negative shit. You name it, they've done it to us. But if we're waiting for the man who did all this crap to us to turn around one day and say, I'm going to be good, and now give you something for it, you're going to wait till, what Malcolm said, till hell freezes over, because it ain't going to happen. So the correct path, I think, to us looking at how we're going to get reparations, how can we take reparations out of this society, as opposed to putting a lot of energy into this, raising our emotions up to a high level and getting our adrenaline flowing, getting our testosterone flowing, to say, yeah, raise our fists about all the negative shit that white people are doing to us. We have to get to a point where we start thinking for ourselves, is there a way for us to extract reparations from him when he's not going to give it up himself? That's why I say Brother Tehuti is a little bit different from other people in terms of how they talk about the subject. It's like these brothers here in this. Again, yeah, we have political prisoners, but let's define what we mean when we say political prisoners. Who are the political prisoners? With this woman running for president, remember it was her husband and that administration that came up with the lock 'em all up attitude of the 1990s that cleaned out a lot of brothers from our communities and put them behind bars. It was that effort that gave rise to people like Rudy Giuliani up in New York City, and those tactics that they employed of stopping all brothers and patting them down and what have you on the sidewalks, looking to see if they could find a weapon because brothers was killing brothers. All the bullshit that these people put out there. And now they're out crying the blues. They need black folk to come vote for his wife in order for her to become president. Well, yeah, I mean, people are going to do what they're going to do. I think that all of our communities would be in much better, worse shape if that white boy becomes the president. What's his name? Donald Trump. There's such. But I don't see a bona fide member of the American political establishment, that is Hillary Clinton, doing that much better if she becomes the president. For folks who like to say that, well, Barack Obama broke the color barrier to become president, and she's going to break the gender barrier to become president. Well, if that's the kind of politics you think is going to make a difference, I understand what you're saying. But again, what's more important is to really understand the policies of the American ruling class. And she represents what's called the liberal wing of the ruling class. But she's still part of the ruling class. And the one thing that the ruling class don't want to do is lose their posture as the ruling class. And if we're not talking about ending the class distinctions in this country and getting rid of the class structure, then everything else is just a joke. Because as long as you allow the same structure to remain in place, you're not going to find a good person who can come along and be the ruler of a corrupt and negative system. And that's what the ruling class system that runs America is. It's a corrupt, negative system. It was created that way, and it has remained that way. The only thing that has changed is they have let more people into it than just the white man by himself. They used to say this was the white man's country. He stole it fair and square. You can't steal something fair and square. They stole it. They committed genocide against the native peoples who were living here. They committed the worst of all human atrocities and bringing millions of Africans here to cut down all the trees and to make this land available for them to build their society upon. Yeah, they lost, like a few 100,000, some say up to 600,000 people might have died in their Civil War. I don't think it was that many, but whatever it was, that's the price and the penalty they paid for having us in slavery and in captivity in the first place. And what has happened since we got out of captivity, they created a second form of captivity. Like in that second form of captivity, you can see it in the speech made by General Oliver O. Howard when they created Howard University, saying now that the Civil War was over, the purpose of American educational institutions would be to assimilate the Negro, not to educate him, to assimilate him. So when you look around at your brothers and sisters and wonder why they look like what Brother Nathan Hare said in his book about 30 years ago, you're looking at black Anglo-Saxons. In other words, you're looking at people with black skin who, for all practical purposes, only know Eurocentric culture. Those of us who are black nationalists, we know the difference. Like in the divide in us goes way back, all the way back to 1820, when the idea of coming up was, let's ship all the free blacks that's gotten out of slavery, let's ship them back to Africa in a colony we're going to build for them over there. They built a colony called Liberia so that we can keep the rest of them in captivity. There the battle lines were drawn. The real black Africans who got out of slavery, they went down and got on the ships and went back to Africa. Those free blacks who had white fathers and stuff, they wanted to stay here and build their community here on this side. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember the situation in South Africa when they had what they called 3 classes of citizens. You had whites, you had the black Africans, and then you had what they called the coloreds, the mixed race peoples. Well, the mixed race peoples there came from the process of the dirty ass white man's love for black women. Therefore, these white men would go out and rape, buy, what have you, but impregnate black women and created a whole status of people called colored people. Well, we have that here in America, and we can't hide from it, but it's not the complexion that makes up what a man or a woman is. It's his consciousness. It's where his mind is, hey. And so we have brothers, who look white, as an ivory bar of soap, but whose mind is blacker than the ace of spades. And we got brothers who are as black as the ace of spades, who think as white as any white man in this society. And the one that pisses me off the most right now is the one that they keep bringing up on the Fox television network. I think he's the sheriff of some town up there in Wisconsin, somewhere close to Milwaukee. Yeah, you're talking about a white man's Negro. This is 2016. And can you believe that it's a man out there defending the status of people who were created? You know who the first cops were in America? The first cops in America were created by the Fugitive Slave Act. That is, these are white men who were empowered to go out and catch runaways. Brothers who had run away from captivity, gone out on their own, trying to get free of the white man. So they created these people who would go out, slave catchers, whatever names they called them. Well, they evolved into police. And so here we are in 2017, and we have a modern day slave catcher, who look just like the slaves used to look to me, and he will defend the white man's right to protect white people from the wild, uncivilized black man, more so than the white man is trying to defend the right for him to lock up black people. This is the kind of Negro, that is sick. He is so sick that Fox News, he's one of their heroes. And every time they get a chance, they bring him on because he is a black man that's doing the dirty work on their behalf. I don't know his name. I don't want to know his name. But most of you have seen him. If you haven't seen him, have somebody pull him up on one of those social media networks, YouTube or something, and listen to some of the stuff that this backwards Negro has coming out of his mouth. And by the way, while I'm at it, I want to send a shout out to the brothers up there in New York City who brought that idiot who put that statement out about Doc Ben being an agent for UNESCO. Nigga, you don't even know what UNESCO is. Let alone you're going to get the brother who set up, who left the university systems and not just teach on college campuses, but came down into the community with community classes to teach the everyday working brothers and sisters about their history. Doc Ben, so for you to come out, from somewhere. In fact, you want to know what he sounds like to me? General, whatever his name, Yahanaha, or whatever he called himself. He sounds like he got all of his knowledge right out of the COINTELPRO playbook of the 1970s. You can go out and buy a copy of the book. They got books published on the kind of stuff they would do. Send a police agent into the community. And he's the one that's running his mouth and belittling black people and getting weaker-minded brothers to go out and do their bidding for him. They did it all over the country. And it sounds like something that comes out of prison, some type of prison knowledge that he's trying to spread, trying to be a modern day version of what he thinks the Hebrew Israelites were from the Old Testament, from the King James Bible. He doesn't even have the Jewish Old Testament. He's dealing with the King James Bible in that version, and having brothers read passages back and forth out of that behind them, thinking they're teaching somebody. Man, that stuff has already been pointed out to be COINTELPRO shit. And if y'all ain't COINTELPRO, then you won't be out trying to demean or belittle one of the people's heroes. Only police agents do that stuff. And you look around with you brothers that came out of prison and put together these weird-ass philosophies while you was in prison. A lot of you were informants in prison, and you're informants as you got out. That's from Brother Tehuti back to the brother in New York City who's trying to belittle one of the great men of our community. That's how I feel about it. And like his nephew or Doc Ben's grandson said, hey, I wouldn't give him the privilege of wanting to go talk to them to find out where they're coming from. If you're old enough and you've been through enough, you've seen these tactics before. And what was funny to me really was the next day or a couple of days later for me to watch on Sinetta TV, watching the FBI, ATF, and everybody else in Homeland Security run in on one of them sets up there because a lot of them are nothing but criminal enterprises. They are not religious people trying to teach you the positive moral structure that you can find in the passages of those books of the Old Testament. These are guys out there dressing like idiots, like calling themselves some type of Hebrew, and the only thing they got to bring to the people is to belittle one of the heroes of the black community. Man, go jump in the ocean and drown. That's, I think of you like I think about cats that people used to throw away. Just throw them out there in the water and let them drown. That's what we need to think about with some of those philosophies that these brothers think they're doing the right thing. Go get a real set of the Old Testament. Get the Itzi Haim. Get the Tanakh. Read the real scriptures and don't get those that's been edited down by the Anglo-Saxon tribe of Britain. Like under the auspices of King James of England. You don't even know what books to look for to really find the real philosophy of these ancient people. And yet you're calling yourself a reincarnation of them. Go tell that to somebody who don't know no better.
And what was Dr. Ben's relationship, and I guess according to you, Theophile Obenga and Sheikh Anta Diop, what was their relationship? Not just Dr. Ben, what was their relationship to it, and what was it all about?
Good question. Okay, yeah, what wasn't brought out is that the UNESCO Commission had a conference on the ethnicity of the ancient Egyptians, the Kemites. The heaviest dudes at the conference was Sheikh Anta Diop and Theophile Obenga, his junior assistant, who came well prepared. And what's been documented historically is that the most in-depth presentation made, not just about the melanin and not just the melanin content in the mummies and the language part that they put together, but that the ancient Egyptians were black people. That's essentially it. And what they were doing, that was during the time period when they were building the big dam on the Nile River, called, I think it's the Gamal Nasser Dam, that flooded the black part of Egypt. See, the Nubia part that's underneath the water, that is south of this dam, is where we know was the black part of ancient Kemet. All that's underwater. And they went over there and they moved several temples. The most famous temple that was moved is the temple of Abu Simbel. It was about to be found, and they went down there and cut it apart and moved it and put it in a different place. This was being done in the late 50s and the early 60s. And as part of all that work that was done, the UN set up a commission on addressing the ethnicity of the ancient Egyptians because there was debate in European scholarship as to whether or not the Egyptians were a white people or whether they were black people or whether or not they were a mixed race of people. So the commission was held, and yet Doc Ben was part of the group that worked with Diop and Theophile Obenga. There were some other brothers on the commission that all, with this, what they call international world body, was trying to save some of the ancient artifacts and buildings of ancient Kemet and not let them be drowned in this big dam, in this big lake that was going to form after this dam, the Nasser Dam, was finished and stuff, right? So this thing about doing anything for the UN would make you a spy is just some stupid shit. That again, somebody who probably, has never read the full report, that don't know everything that was going on back in those days, want to cast negative aspersions at an intellectual black hero like Doc Ben, again, just shows you what type of peanut mind that individual has. But you can go look it up, but you're not going to find anything where Doc Ben was spying for the UN, on behalf of the UN against African people or against Egypt. What Dr. Ben did in the last 50 years of his life, it's not one of you people running around out there like with your uniforms on trying to dress like you imagine ancient Hebrew Israelite must have dressed 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. And none of you will ever accomplish anything like that. Nothing. that you will do will match nothing that Doc Ben did. You know, like, hey. But the other thing I want to give a shout out to the brothers who are going to have the discussion next month, you know, about the Medu Neter, its interpretation and readings. Now, from what I've been listening to, you know, like on Sinetta TV from the various sides, I think there's some confusion in the house. But I like the idea that you are, in fact, are going to have a discussion about it. And whatever you do, you brothers, don't be belittling each other. Leave my friend, young Pharaoh, alone. He's a young man that came of age while he was incarcerated. He'll tell you that. He hadn't been educated before he went to prison, but when he got to the point where he got still and that he could think, you know, he started educating himself. He's out now, and he's a very intelligent young man, and he's bringing some real solid knowledge to young black folk. So y'all stop, you know, like belittling him. He's a good, strong brother. Again, and young Pharaoh, I want you to know that what is it? The squad, the Amin Ra squad. A lot of those brothers are doing some good work. So be careful when you all are reading different Eurocentric scholars, as they call themselves, who are debating how to translate or interpret the ancient language. Be careful with that, because again, there's a lot of things that was done correctly, and there are some things that's done incorrectly. I do agree with you that some of us are pretending that we know exactly how the ancient Kemites pronounced the terms that we are trying to recreate today. Even when we use the term Medu Neter, that's not real. The symbols will say MDU or MDW NTR. We don't know what vowel is supposed to be between those consonants. You know, like, and what most people do, and if you would go get Wallace E.A. Budge's book, the Hieroglyphic Dictionary, he tells you up there very early that what they did, they used their universal interpretation scheme of putting an E in between consonants in order to come up with an idea of how to pronounce a word. So when they say MDW, they make it MEDEW, and we say Medu. When they see NTR, they'll put NETER and say Medu Neter. We don't know that that's what that word was pronounced like, but hey, we're going along with it. So whatever you do in your conference, I hope you brothers draw a conclusion that it is worth learning how to go back and read the ancient script of these ancient black people that laid out a script, a moral behavior, and a way for people to create a positive community and create positive attributes to build amongst themselves. You know, like, so I hope you all have a good conference next month. I'm sorry that I will be at another conference and won't be able to be there myself. I would like to be in the audience to ask some questions. Y'all got some bad brothers up there in New York. Don't ignore Infodici. Infodici has some real solid information. He's been in the field a long time. As he says, he's been to Kemet several times. Understand the work of Theophile Obanga and Cheikh Anta Diop. Understand these ancient folks who already have gone over some of the grounds that we are arguing about today. They've drawn some conclusions. Again. So, Brother Baba, again, welcome back to the nation's capital. I know, you were a youngin' when you left here, and I know you cut your teeth on your black nationalism right here in Washington, D.C. And I'm very happy that you used to come up to our bookstore, the House of Kemet on Georgia Avenue, and interact with us up there, which kind of gave you some guidance before you got away and got to Brother Sinetta up there in Harlem and went on and started your own thing up in Syracuse, New York. And the other thing that I'm really, really, really very proud about, that without waiting for the white man to give you permission or anything else, that with this new technology that's out here to be used in the world, that brothers like Sinetta and brothers like you are using this technology on your own without somebody having to teach you or tell you what to do to bring good, solid information to the people.